Quite a lot to get through. Uh, I need an extra producer. Anybody want to come by and produce the show while I'm doing this? Every time I start, it's like, forgot to push an extra button somewhere and do something. But anyway, Merry Christmas, everybody. Did you have a happy Christmas? Was it a good Christmas for you? Did your kids have a good time? Did your family have a good time? Your spouse, your friends, anybody else like that? We had a great weekend. It was pretty good on Christmas. We had a real chill day, which is always good for me because I tend to have, in a regular work day, I tend to have quite a few things that are going on at one time, which tends to be taxing after a while. It just kind of gets taxing. I'm pretty good at multitasking, but it definitely gets to be a bit taxing. So it's always good for me. I always feel good to have just like a lazy day, if you will, right? Just a day that I can sit back and just kind of do nothing, just blah, be a blob on the chair, or tinker around with something nerdy, whatever it is that I want to do. And yesterday I was able to go hunting. Went hunting with my brother-in-law, which had a good time. It's always fun going hunting with him because he's an absolute nutcase. My brother-in-law is hilarious, man. He cracks me up. The stories that he has, that we talk about, and all of that. It's always good. We always have good conversation in general. So that was cool. Was able to put some meat in the freeze, in the cooler. It's out there bleeding out right now, so that's a good thing as well. So it was a pretty cool, pretty chill weekend. Got to see one of my brothers and did some video chatting and those sort of things, which is always good. Good to see family, and actually I got to see both my brothers, but one of them was just briefly. We met him part the way to take his daughter down, so you know, save on his trip. Anyway, good weekend. The kids enjoyed their gifts, and we just got to hang out and chill. Now, one thing I tend to forget every single year, I come up with a gift that I'm like, yes, this is going to be a great gift, and it always ends up being a lot of work for me having to put it together or something. I don't know why I keep shooting myself in the foot. I thought I was done. We opened up gifts, and I was like, oh, I just have to put up paper. No big deal. And I said, oh, I forgot. I got an air hockey table. So I get that, go out to the garage, bring in the air hockey table, and I'm like, man, this thing is heavier than I remembered because I bought it Black Friday. And so I go out, get it, bring it in. For the next 4 hours, I'm outside or inside. I'm in here putting this thing together. And I'm like, this thing is going to take forever. So finally, Season came over, my wife. She came over and was like, let me help you out. So she started helping me out, and we finally got it together. And it was cool. Come to find out, I actually bought a 4-in-1, which has air hockey. Let me see, what was it? Air hockey, foosball, ping pong, and is converts into like a small little pool table as well, which I had no idea. I just thought it was a foosball table, but happy accidents. So anyway, had a great time. Is what it boils down to. After that, was able to chill and relax, and then get up and drive to the San Antonio area and get some hunting in yesterday. So, and then got some good old sleep. So my family's very competitive though. So we kind of went at it for a few hours yesterday, or Friday, just battling on the foosball table and on the other ones. We're all competitive, even the little one. He's 6, but he has a super competitive gene. It just comes naturally. So anyway, all right. So a lot of news to kind of get through. I'm not sure if we're going to get through it all. I wasn't really even sure where to go with the title here, because there's so much stuff to go through. Like once I started tacking on like everything that we were talking about today, was like, you know, this is too long. So I kind of cut it short, and vaccines, relief, and pardons. But I forgot the pardons, and the pardons are one of the funniest things I wanted to talk about, but we won't spend much time on those. So I wanted to start off by actually suggesting a book. So if you know me personally and you're connected with me on certain social media platforms, you'll know I talk a lot about finances, wealth building specifically, and just the things that I'm learning right now, particular to how to grow, maintain, etc., your wealth. And so I'm constantly listening to audiobooks, YouTube, all sorts of stuff. And we've talked about different channels and things like Earn Your Leisure, Wall Street Trapper, MG the Mortgage Guy, those sort of things. But one of the books that I'm currently looking at right now, or listening to right now, is called Tax-Free Income for Life. And here, I can pull it up here. So Tax-Free Income for Life, a step-by-step plan for a secure retirement. It's not super expensive. They also, as I said, I'm listening to it, so I have the audio book. You can see they have the audio book, the Kindle, and the hardcover. I was actually suggested this book by my cousin, Daryl, who is working right now with helping people with insurance products and like life insurance and those sort of things. And this was a suggestion that they made for us so that we could basically kind of understand how these insurance products work and retirement and these sort of things. So I'm really looking looking forward to retirement in the sense that I'm looking to that day. But retirement in and of itself is just a number. It's not a year, right? Like growing up, we were taught retirement at 60, right? Or 59 and a half or whatever, 55, whatever number you heard growing up. But retirement was basically older age, let's say, because folks are living to 90 now, so 60 is still a long time. But older age, and you've worked for 20, 30 years, depending on whatever system you're in, military versus general government or working in corporate. But the thing we haven't really been taught was that it's a number, right? It's how much do you need a year to retire? If you could live off $100,000 for the rest of your life for the next 50, 60 years, depending on however old you are, you could retire as soon as you have 100,000 in the bank, right? So it's a number, it's not a year, but this book, the Tax-Free Income, is important to me because we talk about it, and we've talked about it in many different episodes. The idea of giving or being double taxed, like you get taxed and then the government comes and they take some more taxes and they do these other things. And then if you have a higher tax bracket that you're in and they're taking 30% or 40%, and you may have state taxes and all these other things. So the government just is always trying to, mess around with your money. When you're retired and you only, let's just say simple numbers. Let's say you have $1 million in your account, your retirement account, right? Let's say you're expecting to live 10 more years. Let's just break this down to simple numbers. $100,000 a year, 10 years. If you're not playing this right, if you're doing things, the way you're doing your distributions and the way you're taking them out, that stuff could be counted as income, which is going to be taxed. So if you take out 100,000, you may only get 78,000 because 22% tax bracket or whatever tax bracket it may be in, those sort of things, right? So anyway, not saying the book is the end all be all and how to actually do it, the exact perfect plan to do it. But I found it interesting. It was talking about different avenues and things that you could do for that. So the other thing, financial, and we'll jump into these news. I've really been digging into these custodial accounts. We set one up for the kids, or for the boys. Our oldest daughter, she's 19, and so we're working on her 401k, mainly because that is taxed or not taxed. It reduces her tax reliability or her tax number now as opposed to it being after tax. So anyway, it reduces the tax she has to pay now. Anyway, I don't know why I fumbled through that. Hello, Sunday. So this one is the UGA versus the UTMA. And I'm just going to go through basically the differences here and talk briefly about them. But the differences are outlined here in these, that the primary difference is that the primary difference between these two accounts is in the asset makeup of the account. A UGMA account is limited to purely financial products such as cash, stocks, mutual funds, bonds, or other securitized instruments and insurance policies. An UTMA account on the other hand, can hold any form of property, including real property and real estate. A parent could put their car into an UTMA account if they choose, or the deed to a family home. The second difference is related to state adoption, where Vermont and South Carolina do not allow UTMA accounts. So depending on your state, you can kind of, pick and choose which one it is that you're interested in. But the thing is so our youngest is 6. We have 12 years to build up this account. We've always thought and lived along the principle of save money, save money, save money. Even if you have an interest-bearing account, right now the interest rates suck. So I think our savings account gets us 0.49% or 0.75%, something like that. It's practically nothing, right? Every little bit helps, of course, but unless you have a super high balance, less than 1% isn't going to give you much. And if you have a super high balance, 1% isn't really going to give you much, when you could be getting 8, 9, 10, 12, 15% if you're putting that money into some sort of vehicle like an ETF or stocks or something like that that could grow over time. So there are better avenues than a high interest account. Your finances, your money, the dollars that you're making is not going to really move the needle if you're just stuffing it in savings. And then also, it's not going to grow at the rate of inflation, right? So right now, the Fed is manipulating the market. They're controlling how much money is being just funneled and pumped in. So it's just inflation is running rampant, and it's about to get worse. So with them doing so, they reduce these interest rates down to basically nothing. Like we're 0 to 0.25 or something like that is the interest rate. So it's crazy. Like they can just do these things on a whim. So the dollar that you have, if you hold that $1 and you keep it for the next 30 years, it's not going to be worth the same that it's worth today. Right? So you need something that's going to grow with the inflation. So thinking about the kids, I'm thinking about their retirement now. And so we set them up with UTMA accounts. And Alex, she has her 401k that we're working on with her. And so that's going to grow with the kids over time, and we're just going to start putting money into there. They might not like it, but at one point, sometime in the future, their birthday or Christmas or something may not be it may not be gifts. It may end up being deposits into their UTMA. I'm laughing because they're gonna be mad. They're gonna be like, "But I wanted this gift," and I'll be like, "Nah, but you'll thank me in 30 years." So we'll see. I don't know. I like giving gifts too much, so maybe not, but we'll see. All right, so I'll say one more thing financial, but there's one other thing. So Bitcoin, this is just real quick. If you haven't been following cryptocurrencies, XRP is hitting pretty much some pretty big legal challenges right now, in that they're trying to say that XRP was basically selling securities, and it's basically stating that XRP is not a digital currency, in the way that XRP is saying it. So you may have seen that Ripple, the company that's behind XRP, is being sued by the SEC. So I was talking about this with our PFA group. And I wish Mike was on so we could actually discuss these things in a little more detail, but I didn't want to dive in too deep because I figured whenever Mike's able to join again, then we'll actually dig into what this means. But I mentioned to them that this ends up being a really big play overall for all of crypto, not just XRP. And this is what this article is largely talking about. So this is from Bloomberg. It's Bitcoin faces regulatory scrutiny after record-breaking rally. And the point of this article is that Bitcoin has jumped up. And I'll just come down here a little bit so you can see this chart. If you're not watching, if you're listening to the podcast, hello, audio viewers. Please go to YouTube, hit like, subscribe. You can also be notified whenever we go live or catch us live on Facebook. So the Bitcoin revival here in this chart is actually showing that this last little spike, we actually have gone from roughly about, and this is just in 2020, roughly about $10,000, $11,000, and we actually touched $28,000 yesterday. So essentially, if you bought at $10,000, if you put $1,000 in there, when we hit 20, your money was now worth double, right? And so now we almost hit triple, right? So if you bought at 1,000, it's even looking better. So the idea here is that this is starting to become a little bit more mainstream. And as it becomes mainstream, it's very possible that the government could come in and start trying to do some, the government wants their cut is what it boils down to. They want their cut. And if they don't get their cut, if you don't render unto Caesar, they're going to find some sort of way, some sort of loophole to get their money, their hands on your money. And that's what they're largely talking about in this article. It's just going to be interesting to see kind of how it plays out. Are we going to end up getting to the point where they do try to put some limitations? Mnuchin said recently that they want all Bitcoin addresses or all crypto. I think he may have said Bitcoin, but wouldn't surprise me if he means all crypto accounts. So all crypto accounts to be tracked, like registered. So if you have a Bitcoin account, then they want to know what your account is. This specific Bitcoin address is for John Bland. That's what they want to know. And that way they can have some checks and balances and find out, did you receive a gift? Okay, then we want to, get a cut. Same thing that if I give a check to somebody and it's for $11,000, or let's say $10,000. Well, I think it actually went up. I think it may be 10,500 or maybe 12,000. If you do that, if you reach a certain threshold, then the bank notifies the government, right? So that's why if you hear about certain things where people will make deposits of like $9,999 because that doesn't meet the threshold, right? So anyway, there's all these things and people are always going to find loopholes, but the government wants their hands on your money, whether it's crypto or whether it's actually fiat cash or whatnot. But even if they don't, their reasoning is weird because people could use their cash to do whatever they wanted to do. You can still operate in cash and money launder and fund terror states and all this other stuff. But they're going to try to mess up cryptocurrency is what it boils down to, as opposed to adopting it. All right, so if you haven't heard, there was an explosion in Nashville, and we don't have a lot of information on this. They're still trying to figure out what it was, why it happened, was it domestic terrorism, and domestic terrorism actually happens because of there's a political lean to it. So we don't know if it's actually domestic terrorism or just somebody that's just angry and wants to blow things up. So federal prosecutors and Nashville police on Saturday said that they are following more than 500 leads and tips in their investigation into an explosion that rocked downtown Nashville, Tennessee on Christmas morning. The big picture is the explosion, which injured at least 3 people, caused widespread telephone, internet, and other outages in central Tennessee and in parts of neighboring states. Federal agents searched the home of a possible person of interest, who, by the way, we have that name now, in the Nashville suburb in Antioch Saturday, per multiple reports. So they said this was an intentional act. So before Friday's explosion, the authorities believe this was an intentional act. Witnesses reportedly heard a recorded voice from the RV saying, "Evacuate now, there is a bomb. A bomb is in the vehicle and will explode." The voice then started a 15-minute countdown, and the RV music played. Officers responded to an early morning call on Friday for shots fired. They encountered the RV as the recording played. The police said the officers began evacuating nearby buildings. The RV exploded about 6:30 a.m. They said preliminary reports said 41 buildings and businesses were damaged. The Federal Emergency Management Agency said Saturday that tissue samples found at the scene were human remains, per the AP. This story is crazy. It's really wild. Obviously, there's a motive. There's a reason why somebody does something like this. I mean, they had to make the bomb, pack it in the vehicle, set the music, record the voice, and like do all of those things. So meaning it wasn't a knee-jerk thing, right? Like, oh, I had a bad week, or oh, it's Christmas morning and I'm sad. No, they planned this. It took some timing, planning, preparation, things of that sort. So it made me think about something, because a lot of people would think, oh, this guy, oh, he snapped. And there was something that I can't remember. Jason Stapleton had mentioned it, but I can't remember who he said it was. There's basically, I think, a book or something about snapping. And basically the point is, people don't just snap. Like, it's not a snap in that sense where people just snap and go off and do something crazy like this. It's a continuous thing. It's a build up, right? You're building up from whatever anger or situation you may be feeling. And once you build up, then you end up going off and doing something. And so I'm not sure what necessarily happened here. What was the build up? What was the thing that pushed him to get to this point? We don't really know what it was. But we do know right now who they believe it was. And who they believe it was is Anthony Quinn Warner. He was named as the person of interest. And that's because they put out a notice. They put out the picture here that's on the right. And that picture, they basically were like, if you know anything about this RV, let us know. The picture on the left is the RV before. The one on the right is the night of the explosion, or the morning. And then the one on the left is one that they found from Google Maps on a property that's linked to Anthony Quinn Warner. Now, we don't know if he is actually the person who did it or not, but we'll find out soon. So they say it's a 63-year-old Tennessee man who was named the person of interest in the explosion. And Anthony Warner is basically, and mind you, I do caution against stating that he is the person. It's definitely allegedly right now, but we're not really sure. But, anyway, it's ongoing. So just keep that in mind, because they have been wrong in the past on some of these things. But this is what they're saying. The FBI agents spent the days at another location today besides searching the home of Anthony Warner, pursuing tips that he was paranoid about 5G spying on Americans. So that's that buildup we're talking about, right? He feels like Americans are being spied on, and all this 5G going around is part of that. So Warner, who is unmarried and childless, is self-employed in the IT area, a neighbor said. State records show that he once was licensed as an alarm contractor with a specialty in burglary alarm installation. In recent years, he lost his father and brother, leaving him with a few living family members. On Saturday, a Newsweek editor said DNA swabs were being collected from Warner's mother, possibly to help identify human remains. So it's possible that he was the person who was there, that they found the tissue, as they were saying. So here's an old picture of Warner from 1974 in the Antioch High School yearbook. He was a junior in high school when it was taken. So, they haven't found much out about him. They said even the neighbor, one neighbor that didn't want their name printed, didn't even really know him. Just said he was a white male with a slight build, standing about 5 feet 5 inches, grayish hair, kind of long. And that was about it. So this article here is from heavy.com. You can check it out. They do end up updating these articles as they go. And they're usually pretty good about digging into this stuff. Anytime there's some sort of terrorism or something like that, I tend to come to heavy.com to actually check it out, because they end up breaking this stuff down. And then this is what I was scrolling for, was to find this section. They always list out a few things that you need to know. And these things that you need to know are kind of related to who, what, why, where, that sort of stuff. And as you can see, it's a very long article with all sorts of details. And I mean, look, they got the quitclaim deed. I mean, heavy.com does a good job with this stuff. They really do. I tend to go to them anytime there's a situation like this that's happened. So prayers to the area, prayers to the families, anybody who may have been injured there. They think there's 3 or 4 injuries, and don't know who was in the van, if it was him or if it was somebody else. But, tragic situation. There could turn out to be something related to him parking by AT&T, right? The whole 5G thing. He went to, a specific place that would end up knocking out AT&T and different signals that could go out. So, don't know. Seems plausible that it was to attack AT&T specifically and knock out the connection in that entire area. And in that sense, he was successful. It actually knocked out, as they said, in that area and even surrounding states. So, all right. So the COVID vaccine is rolling out, and it's rolling out in a big way across the country, or the world right now. So it's definitely rolling out here in America, but we're also starting to see it actually roll out in the EU. And so the EU has launched a coronavirus vaccine drive to inoculate 450 million people. And so this is from Axios. The European Union began on Sunday a coordinated rollout of coronavirus vaccines across its 27 member states in a drive to inoculate some 450 million people. This is why it matters. Several European countries have tightened restrictions as cases, deaths, and hospitalizations surge. EU countries have recorded at least 16 million COVID-19 cases and 336,000 deaths since the pandemic began, just per the AP. The vaccinations come in a week that saw the first cases of a new COVID-19 variant, first reported by the UK, detected in France, Spain, and Sweden, as well as Japan and Canada. The big picture: Pfizer BioNTech vaccine shipments arrived reading is hard on a Sunday. Jesus. Arrived to EU countries on Saturday. Most countries received just under 10,000 doses in their first shipments, according to the AP. So we're basically starting to see these vaccines get there. But of course, you got anti-vaxxers in every single country. So it's not just an American thing that people don't want to take the vaccine because of Trump or, whatever the case may be. Those things definitely exist. But you also have it in other countries where people just, either they don't trust government, they don't want to, be shot up with something that they think they're injecting something that's bad for you, those sort of things, right? So, you're going to have it in every place people exist, basically. That's people. It's a human reaction. So along these same lines, more than 4.2 million shots have been given. This is a COVID-19 vaccine tracker. This is actually on Bloomberg, and this was updated today, or yesterday, actually. It was updated. It says U.S. Has administered 1.94 million doses according to the CDC. So the biggest vaccination campaign in history has begun. More than 4.2 million doses in 7 countries have been administered, according to data collected by Bloomberg. Delivering billions more will be one of the greatest logistical challenges ever undertaken. Vaccination in the U.S. began December 14th with healthcare workers, and so far 1.94 million doses have been administered, according to a nationwide tally from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Bloomberg is also tracking doses at the state and territory level to give a picture of how the rollout is going nationwide. Vaccines across America, more than 1.49 million or 1.94 million. Okay, so as you can see here, if you're not watching, if you're on the podcast and you're not watching, what we have here is basically a map of the United States, and it's showing who has been vaccinated the most, basically from zero, to over. Well, I guess they have a 1 there. I don't know if that's okay. So this is doses as percentage of population. So basically, Alaska, Colorado, South Dakota, North Dakota, West Virginia, and Maine look like they are basically leading in the vaccination round. And Hawaii looks like it really doesn't have much of anything. Yeah, they're pretty much gray. And Oklahoma, Kansas, Mississippi, Georgia, and North Carolina also are light on the vaccinations. Wisconsin and Minnesota as well. And then every other state is kind of varying in between there. So it's getting there. It's rolling out. They also have the numbers and the data, those sort of things. So you could imagine as this continues to roll out that, you're going to start seeing states who are going to use this as their measuring stick, and kind of rightfully so, right? They're going to use it as their measuring stick to see whether or not they should shut down or open up, because if, according to the percentage of your population, if you have, I don't know, pick a random number, 80% of your population is vaccinated, why would you stay closed? Like, what's their reasoning at that point, for staying closed? Especially if the vaccine is readily available, which we don't know if it will be or not, but, it's of note. It's something to be, to pay attention to, just to be sure and kind of see. So with the COVID vaccine going out, we also saw, and we talked about this on the last episode, and I brought up and I mentioned how all of this works and how people tend to excoriate a president or give the president, extra kudos for some action. And the only thing that they can say when it comes to these bills is, I'm not going to go along with it, which means if you bring it to me, I'm going to veto it. And then Congress can come back and say, we're going to override the veto, which, works in certain scenarios. And then, we talked about it. We said that when they passed in the House and they passed it in the Senate, that it was now up to Trump to basically sign it. And Trump said, nah, we're not doing that one. So the interesting part is now he wants a bill that is $2,000 per family. Now, we talked about all the things that this money is doing or going to, it's like benefits for if you own a racehorse, right? Stuff like that. Like there's all these sort of things. And also mentioned that the Republicans who were out talking about, that they care now about the deficit and things like that. But they didn't care, for the last 4 years, right? But then now they went ahead and signed, this bill. And I mentioned there were a few Republicans who actually didn't sign or agree to this bill that are in Congress. They actually voted no. And I said, I don't know why they did it, but we'll soon find out. And soon enough, we have found out. And I mentioned specifically Rand Paul, because Rand Paul is a libertarian. Father is kind of one of the, I don't want to say forefathers, but he's one of the legendary libertarians in that entire movement. And so so Rand Paul actually puts out this Festivus report every year. And the Festivus report is basically where he talks about things that are being spent. And this particular report, he said the top 10 grievances, and actually, you know what, let me pull this up. Let me actually put this on the other screen so you guys can see it as well. But I'll also read it out for those who aren't able to see this. So I'll pull this up real quick. This actually is an article from deadline.com. You can find it on many different sites. I particularly just pulled up this Deadline because it kind of gave a quick review of it so that we could kind of see it. All right, so this Deadline article, the senator's top 10 grievances included about $1.5 million to the National Science Foundation devoted to research that involved walking lizards on a treadmill. I'm just going to let that one resonate for a second. Almost $20 million went to the Federal Aviation Administration, spent to renovate an airport taxiway over on Nantucket Island that's mostly used by private jets, with some of the funds coming from the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or the CARES Act. I mean, that's important, right? Like we got to spend the $20 million, you know, from the FAA to renovate an airport taxi on an island that's mostly used by private jets, right? Like, it's important, right? It's all about that money, man. Over $10 million to the Federal Emergency Management Agency designated for buying test tubes for coronavirus testing, only to receive many soda bottles instead. I mean, look, I could just start making stuff up and it would fit in here. I could just make something up and you would be like, you would believe me. You'd be like, yeah, okay, so they stuck. I can't believe they did that. And it could be a complete lie, but it would fit. Like walking lizards on a treadmill. How far? Okay. All right. Woosah. About $2 million to the National Institutes of Health provided for research into whether hot tubbing is able to reduce stress. Now, if you're listening on the podcast, would you believe that that was something I made up or something that actually happened? Rest assured, it's something that actually happened. See, I tested you there. If you were looking on YouTube, if you were paying attention, you would have seen that it was actually on the list. But if you weren't, you may have thought I was just making that up. But I wasn't. I wasn't making that up. So, bringing all that back, we spend and waste so much money, right? Now mind you, if the Democrats came out and said, we want $2,000 per person, oh, the Republicans would just be going crazy. But as soon as Trump said it, I literally saw a friend post a meme about Trump and say, this is why he should be reelected. Mind you, he wasn't. So it's kind of weird that he said should be reelected. that ship has sailed. But it's like, dude, like, you only care because your guy said it. This is the whole point of the podcast, right? People only care, Trumpers specifically only care because Trump said it, right? And so I don't even know what you call Biden people, but Bideners, they're going to support Biden because Biden said it, right? If Biden would come out and say, no, we don't need 2,000 because we need to do something else, blah, blah, blah. You know, I don't know. They're not as supportive of Biden in the way of Trump. Trump has sold them on an idea and they are just latched in. So they're a little more fanatical for Trump in that way. So maybe with Biden, they don't necessarily say it, right? But Obviously, there's, with Obama, it was like that. Like Obama said it and people believed it and that sort of stuff, right? So in this case, Trump is doing something that, in my opinion, I agree with. And the reason why, we've said it in one of the last episodes, the $600 isn't going to move the needle much. It just isn't. It's going to help, right? The 600 for a family will be per person, and then plus for the children. So if you add all that up, that does help, right? That obviously does help. 2,000 helps even more. And until this thing is controlled, I mean, we're possibly looking at, when Biden takes office on January 20th, looking at a shutdown from a national level. Now, how far that really goes, like, are they really going to bring out the National Guard? Will states comply? I mean, Texas, we always joke about being the great republic of Texas, but we just think different down here, right? So it's very possible that in the great republic of Texas, Governor Abbott will pop up and say, we're not following that. We're ignoring that order. Now, mind you, states' rights exist. So all of that could possibly happen, right? But there could be a shutdown again that we experience to try to get full control, because cases are coming up, like they are going up. And there's looking at, as I mentioned in one of the last articles here, they're looking at a new strain of COVID that's coming out. The mutations in viruses are expected. The same thing happened with H1N1. It came out about September or so, it kind of died down. And then we saw a new strain come out. And then deaths started spiking again. So it took about a year for that to be completely under control, with the vaccine and all that stuff helping. With COVID, a new strain come out, we're back in lockdown again. So this is important because, as I mentioned before, what happens here is the government shutdown was looming. And so with the shutdown's looming, they decide we got to get something done, because you can't shut down the government, right? They always do this sort of stuff. If you go back to the very first shutdown, the Democrats wanted DACA solved, Trump wanted his wall funded, and the Republicans wanted these sort of things. Like, it was all these different things. Not everybody's going to get what they wanted. Democrats didn't get DACA resolved. That didn't get resolved till this year in the Supreme Court. Trump didn't get his wall funded. It was like all these things that they threaten, and then eventually when it gets to the last hour, they fix it, right? That's what they always do. Or they do like a temporary funding bill that they come back. And because these are funding bills, to set them out for the next, 3 months or whatever it is. So they want to push these things and get them in now so they don't have to come back and deal with them later. So they agreed. They came to a deal. Democrats said, it's just a down payment. We're going to do more when Biden takes office, blah, blah, blah. Go back and watch the last few episodes. You'll kind of get caught up on that aspect of it. So this article that I've been showing now for the last however long it's been just sitting here is expanded unemployment benefits lapse with a relief bill in limbo. Now, this is an unexpected, or it's not unexpected. It is a consequence of what Trump did that people aren't necessarily paying attention to unless they're on unemployment, right? Those benefits all lapsed this morning. So they're over and done with. So again, we're back to the last hour, last minutes of this being resolved, and now they have to come to some sort of resolution. On Wednesday, the Democrats actually put the bill up for vote, but they actually kind of did like the rush bill, which means just one Republican can block it, and that happened, right? So in this article, talking about the unemployment benefits, so expanded unemployment benefits are set to lapse for millions of Americans struggling. Sunday. Why can't I read today? Expanded unemployment benefits are set to lapse for millions of struggling Americans after President Trump resisted calls to sign the stimulus bill before the end of Saturday. Why it matters. States cannot pay out benefits for weeks that begin before the bill is signed, meaning that if the president does not sign the bill Saturday, which was yesterday, benefits will not restart until the first week of January, but they will still end in mid-March, effectively trimming the extension to 10 weeks from 11. This is the New York Times reporting. Such action could trigger a federal government shutdown when money runs out at 12:01 a.m. Tuesday in the middle of the pandemic. So the context is Trump blindsided lawmakers on Tuesday when he indicated that he would not sign the $900 billion coronavirus relief bill and $1.4 trillion government funding measure passed by Congress if it's not amended to increase stimulus payments. Now, remember, and you can go on, this is from Axios. If you remember, when we talked about the last relief bill, they weren't trying to push $2,000. Remember, Democrats in June or July were trying to get higher payments, and we've seen them fighting, and they've been going back and forth on this for months about getting higher payments. And the Democrats finally just acquiesced and said, you know what, it is what it is. We'll deal with this whenever our guy takes over, right? That was their nod to when Biden takes over. You know, they would basically get what they wanted, basically, for the American people. And so, you know, we've seen a flip-flop here where Trump says it and now Trumpers are like, yeah, that's our president. But when the Democrats were saying it, they were like, oh, socialism. This stuff cracks me up, man. Like, it cracks me up because you can really, really, really see the way that this stuff is going, right? It's hilarious to see how this stuff is going, how people just continue to push this left versus right paradigm, and it's just silly. It's just absolutely silly. And we have somebody in the chat saying that China should be paying reparations. Yeah, okay. So let's deal with reparations for black people, and let's see if you keep that same energy. That probably changes your energy a lot, right? All right, so I'll try to ignore the live chat. So it won't go through this article, coming up to the end here, but won't go to this article. But basically, there is a new coronavirus variant that reaches Canada, Japan, and several EU countries. As I mentioned, I'll show it here for the people that are watching on YouTube or Facebook. So just keep an eye on this because this is going to be a big deal if we start seeing a new strain come in. Then we're going to start seeing these same things. The same sort of measures are going to start popping up. That's just going to happen. And so just be prepared. As we mentioned before, we're talking about these things about finances, growing our wealth, things like that. Like the point of doing those things is so, you know, as they say, you can have like that FU money, and the FU is specifically targeted towards the government, right? You want to shut us down? Doesn't matter. We can survive, you know, without you sort of mindset, right? That's what we kind of want to get to, where we have our things in the proper vehicles to where we don't depend on the government. Not in terms of like bailouts or things like that, but like we don't depend on the government's decision making, right? Not talking about welfare or nothing like that. Like we don't depend on their decisions. Like literally their decisions can't change our lives in a measured way, right? And so it's just about that. Whatever that number means for you. If that means $1 million in a bank or in assets or whatever, then that's what it means. If it means 50,000, doesn't matter. Whatever that number means to you, to where you can survive without the government, that's the important number that you want to get to. And that's what we're trying to kind of push in this vein. So that way, when they start going through regime changes from president to president or the Congress changes, you know, there's like we're getting Biden, right? Biden's joining or becoming president in January. So January 20th, he's president. 2 years from now, we're going to have a new Congress. We're going to have elections. People are going to be voted out. Matter of fact, next week on the 5th or the 6th, Georgia votes for the runoff election between the two different, or I guess 4 different, candidates who are running for the Georgia Senate seats. That could flip the Senate. So the Democrats can be in control, or maybe not. Maybe the Republicans are going to stay in control. We don't know. Maybe in 2 years, maybe it's going to be a supermajority again, where you got the Democrats heavily controlling the Senate. They also control the House, and also the presidency. Maybe they have all of it. We don't know. But we need to not be dependent upon that, because we can't trust their decision making. All right. Last segment. I saved this one for last because it's especially funny to me. Because the one story that just seems so implausible and unbelievable that it blew my mind when I first heard it, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. But it's absolutely true. So we're going to dig into it in a second. All right, so this article from Axios is Christmas time for Trumpland convicts. And this was basically after Trump pardon. There's been more pardons released. We're not going to go through the list right now, but basically this this is Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, and Charles Kushner. So Paul Manafort, if you haven't heard that name, you haven't been watching the news for the first 3 years of Trump's presidency, his name was mentioned quite a bit. You don't hear much of it right now. There's not much there. But he basically got convicted in the Russia probe. He's very much so known for kind of shifting money, let's just say, put it lightly. He's been known for kind of shifting money. Roger Stone was also convicted of the Russia probe. He basically broke some laws, said, I'm going to court. And he went to court and was found guilty. He tried to play it up in so many ways. But there's a Netflix special or documentary on Roger Stone, and I can't remember what it's called, but something like Roger Stone, I don't know. But anyway, look it up. Netflix, Roger Stone. And you'll see that Roger Stone has had his hand in, he's been manipulating politics behind the scenes since Nixon. And he's really, really, Nixon loved him. He was a complete, Nixon head or whatever they were called, Nixonite, I don't know. But he's been just really growing and manipulating. He's that guy, literally puppet master behind the scenes. So when it came for George Bush's election and the runoff, he was in Florida behind the scenes manipulating. They brought him out to get him, in the mix. He dealt with Reagan getting elected and all of this stuff. So of course, when Trump runs, he taps Roger Stone. Now, they tried the distance from Roger and all these things. I'm not going to go through his whole case, but Roger has openly stated that he goes to the point of breaking the law right there. And sometimes he'll step over slightly if he can get away with it, right? He's openly stated that he flirts with the law in that sense. So went to court, found guilty, right? But he's a Trumper, so he gets a pardon. Charles Kushner. Now, if you don't know any other Kushner, you probably know Jared Kushner, who is the son-in-law of Trump, or Jared Kushner is the son-in-law of Donald Trump. Sorry, my mind was running in a different direction. So Charles is Jared's father, right? So, all right. So I'm going to read this part from the article, and then I'm going to give you the story. That's so crazy. Charles Kushner is a developer who pleaded guilty in 2004 for filing false tax returns, retaliating against a witness, and making false statements to the FEC as part of a prosecution by then-attorney Chris Christie, right? Mind you, Chris Christie has been out talking about Trump, in, let's just say, not so glowing fashion. Mind you, Chris Christie has also been one that's been over Trump's shoulder at many different press conferences and things like that. Like, he's been a Trumper, like on the Trump team and doing us right. So he's kind of been embedded within this system. And so this is probably a bit of a middle finger to Chris Christie for calling Trump out on his management of coronavirus and, all these other things. Chris Christie, the election, that I was trying to think of, what was it? Chris Christie was basically calling out Trump for his actions throughout the election cycle here. So, so it's probably a bit of a middle finger to Chris, but here's Charles Kushner. Now, the article says that he pleaded guilty for filing false tax returns. While this process was going on, while he was under investigation, they had a cooperating witness. And they mentioned here that he retaliated against a witness. And then he also lied to the FEC and these sort of things, right? Charles Kushner was basically like a real estate magnate. Like he was a big name in New York, in that area. So of course him and Trump, probably ran in some of the same circles. Very, very wealthy, very wealthy. And the cooperating witness was married. Charles Kushner hired a prostitute personally, hired an investigator, a PI, and the PI was meant to go and record the person having sex with the prostitute and then deliver the tape to the cooperating witness. Basically, I can reach you, right? I can blow your whole thing up. I can mess this whole thing up for you if you're going to cooperate with the prosecution. The cooperating witness was his sister. This is why when I heard about it, I just cracked up because I'm just like, I know there's a funny story here on what happened, and I couldn't remember what it was. It's not so funny for the family because Charles has largely been excommunicated from the family ever since this whole situation happened. Jared ended up taking over the business, and there's a whole slew of information that if you look at Jared and you don't know all the details, you think, oh, he's a clean cut. No. Jared has done some very, very shady stuff in business. I can't recall but there's another documentary. I love documentaries. There's a documentary on Netflix about the whole thing, and that's where I first heard about Charles Kushner and Jared Kushner. It may be one of the something about money. Anyway, it's on Netflix. And so I think it's Dirty Money may be the one. So anyway, like can you imagine your sibling being a cooperating witness and you hire a prostitute for your brother-in-law to have sex with, then you record it, then you threaten your sister? Craziest thing. Crazy. He just got pardoned. It's the craziest story. It's not really funny, but for me, it's hilarious because it's like, dude, that's how far you were willing to blow up your entire relationship with your family, which ended up happening because your sister was a cooperating witness. I told you guys on last episode or one before when we talked about these pardons, I told you it was going to get crazy. And we talked about how Bill Clinton, I just kept thinking George Bush, but George Bush was taking office. Bill Clinton, it was basically an international fugitive that Bill Clinton pardoned. And Trump still has, today's the 27th, he still has 23 more days to do more pardons. And they're coming. Rest assured, if he decided to do Charles Kushner before Christmas, oh yeah, he's January 19th, just watch. Trump's about to drop the pardon hammer. He's about to let some folks loose, man. Anyway, it's funny. I appreciate you guys joining us for this hour. We're the Political Free Agents. Right now, if you're on YouTube, at the bottom, hit the like button, hit subscribe, share the show out. That's the only thing I'm asking you to do. It's free. You don't even have to pay to do these things. You can do them for free. Merry Christmas. That's my gift. My gift to you is you sharing the show out, and I appreciate you for it. Love y'all. Really enjoyed coming here. Enjoy the feedback that we've been having. It's been very positive, and I really appreciate that. Find us on social media at PFA Podcast. What we're starting to do is actually share out the articles that I have here. So go there and I'll put them into a feed and they'll start sharing out so that you can see kind of like show notes in a sense. Catch us also on politicalfreeagents.com where you can get the links to all of our social media, all of our YouTube, everything else, and all the past episodes. We're PFA. We'll catch you on the flip side. We're out.